Hello, and welcome to Women in Business, where we interview entrepreneurs and senior managers and show you the strengths, successes, obstacles, and roadblocks women experience in business. Since I believe every person in business needs to be visible, I'd like to invite you to watch www.sob6, that's the number 6, tips.com, which will give you some valuable information should you get the call to be on radio or TV, which I think is extremely important. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at Gayle Carson, that's Gayle, Gayle Carson 13 at gmail.com, or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Hi, everyone. This is Gayle Carson, and I have a terrific guest with me by the name of Lynda Roth. With more than 30 years' experience contributing to organizations as a senior technology executive, business consultant, and digital transformation strategist, Lynda Roth has developed keen insight and a proven track record of solving business problems through technology. She also was an early proponent of using information technology not simply to improve business efficiency, but to create a competitive advantage and accelerate business growth. As a result, she has been transforming businesses for over 20 years using digital technology. Welcome to the show, Lynda.
Thank you, Gayle. I'm glad to be here.
Well, you are the exact opposite of me. I know nothing about IT. It's just something that I never was interested in, and I'm a very slow adapter. So you got 100 times over on me, and believe me, in today's world, you are really somebody who is needed. So you told us, or I told a little bit about your background, but why don't you tell us how you got started in your career and why information technology? And you really were ahead of your time.
Yes, I was. And the way I got started is a little bit of a funny story. When I graduated from high school in the early 70s, there were really no degree programs in information technology. People just went to computer programming, schools. And I didn't really know anything about it. And so when I graduated from high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, except I knew I didn't want to get married. And my father suggested that I should become an accountant because I had worked in his business as a bookkeeper as a teenager, but that didn't thrill me real well either. So I talked to my high school counselor, and he said, why don't you go take the computer science curriculum at the junior college, at the new junior college? And he said, you can graduate in 2 years and earn a lot of money as a computer programmer. I said, okay, why not? I had no idea, just like you, I had no idea what I was getting into. And I remember the first class, which wasn't anything I ended up having to learn, but the instructor was just demoing the old wire boards that was the first programming, that you just programmed connecting wires. And I remember sitting in that class going, oh my God, this is what I've got myself into. I'm in trouble. But it turned out I graduated third in my graduating class, and I got landed a really good position with Ralston Purina in St. Louis, which at the time had the second best data center after McDonnell Douglas in St. Louis. And my career was off to the races.
That's amazing. It's one thing to be told, go take this course. It's another thing to like it and to do well in it, which is what you did. I would have probably sat there like a blank wall. So that's fabulous. But what made you leave corporate and then go out on your own?
Well, I had about three jobs, traditional jobs as a computer developer in St. Louis and Ralston, and then I had an opportunity to move to the Bay Area in California with Levi Strauss, and I didn't like the Bay Area, so then I moved down to Southern California, and I worked at Hughes Helicopters when they were developing the Apache helicopter, and I was in charge of all of the systems, not the systems on the helicopter, but all the business systems related to the Apache contract. And I was just bored with it. I just thought, if I have to do this for the next 30 years, I think I'll blow my brains out. So I then took a job with a software company. And what I saw when I was working with a software company in those days, software companies just sold software. they'd answer the support line on the telephone, but they didn't help anybody implement them. And I had clients asking all the time for help with implementation, and the company wouldn't let myself and the other people in my group do it. So I just left. A couple of us left and said, well, we'll start doing it on our own. And so that started my consulting career. And I've never looked back.
Well, that's amazing. Now, let me ask you something. When you started this company and you built the software company, you said you had partners with you?
Yes. Well, I was consulting, just installing software for a little while, and then I saw another void, which was the financial systems of the day were very good at counting the beans, right, and getting all the information that the accountants needed, but they were very poor at giving information that executive management needed. So I had the idea that we needed to write some software to do that, which at that time nobody called it business intelligence, but it was a precursor to the current business intelligence applications of today. And so I needed some partners to help me with it, primarily from the design and development standpoint of the underlying database technologies. And so I had two other partners, and we bootstrapped a mainframe software company. And we were in business for about 5 years.
So my question to you is, or I guess questions, how is it working with partners? That's number one. And were your partners male or female?
My partners were both men. Although I did have a woman that I had worked with at one of my consulting clients who became our CFO, but she was not an official partner. And it was great working with them when we were designing the system. Their job was to do all of the database technology design, and my job was to do the business design. And I ended up doing a lot of the negotiations. We had to negotiate a lot of deals because you didn't just go out and buy a mainframe, right? Those things cost millions of dollars. And so I had to negotiate a lot of partnerships. To me, bootstrapping this company was my own personal MBA program, because I learned how to create partnerships with other larger companies, and how to sell. I didn't know how to sell very well. I learned how to sell and close the deals. And I closed some big deals. American Express Bank was one of them. First Interstate Bank was another. Shearson Lehman Hutton. And so from the collaborative point of view, it was good working with partners. But in the end, we couldn't agree on where the company needed to go. And I was odd man out on some of our votes. And so I ended up leaving, and they ended up putting the company into bankruptcy.
Well, that's kind of a normal tale. It's like when I sold my company to I say a big small company, and then they changed everything I was doing. I think they saw this one little person doing this whole entire thing and thought, well, if we put some really great corporate strategies in here, it's going to just zoom off. Well, of course it didn't, and they were out of business a year later. So I understand exactly what you are saying. But I'm wondering, since this is a women in business show, did you run into any biases? Because you're talking a few years ago. Did you run
Mm-hmm.
into any biases because you were a woman? In other words, you were negotiating the deals and you were doing the coaching on it and the consulting on it. Did you have issues with anybody?
Well, I think more when I was in the corporate world trying to climb the quote corporate ladder is when I ran into big issues. I couldn't make it past being a project manager. And partly I didn't really want to either, but that was the career path, and I wasn't going to get very far that way. When I was working in my own company, there wasn't really anything out in the open about it. As a matter of fact, I think that a lot of men saw it as it's unusual to have a woman, and I think I caught them off guard. I was able to negotiate some things that I don't know that they would have negotiated with a man.
Well, you see, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think that sometimes women limit themselves because they feel there is an unconscious bias, which there may be. I'm not saying there isn't, but just like with me in my first business, I mean, I was a youngster. I was 21 when I went into business, and 99% of the people I dealt with were men because there really weren't that many women in business at that point. And um, I did very well. And I think it was because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to. That's number one. I had a little
Right.
different experience because I never worked in corporate America. I mean, I always worked for myself. But also, I just think that, when you go in there with a certain attitude, if they want what you've got, they're going to make the deal. It's just basically as simple as that. So you've seen IT really evolve. So, what is it like now compared to when you started?
Well, interestingly, it still doesn't have as many women as I would like to see. I mean, I've been an interim CIO for companies in my helping them transform themselves. And so I've had to hire, and I've tried desperately to hire women, and I just don't get very many women that apply. So interestingly enough, I don't think enough women are getting into the field in terms of being a real developer. Now you see a lot of women in social media marketing, for example, which today is really a technical job. So you see women there. But then just the advances in the technology have been cataclysmic, just amazing. And, if you look at where we were, just one simple example I was thinking about this morning, back when I was a kid and the telephone was just becoming an everyday um, device that we used, right? I remember my mother saying one time, I think probably because the Jetsons TV show was on and you had visual telephones on the Jetsons, and she said something about, wouldn't it be funny when we start having phones that you could see people? And my mother's only been gone 10 years, but she never saw the Zoom and now the new portal device that you have. And so just something that simple in our everyday lives. But then when you think about what technology has done in the medical field and in other places, um, it's just unbelievable. I say to people today, if you're not a technology company, if you don't think of yourself as a technology company or think of yourself as a technology worker, you're going to be in trouble, because that's where everything is going. Everything's going to be technology based.
Well, I know you say that digital transformation is business transformation. So,
Yes.
what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that today digital transformation has become a big buzzword and a search term, but I think most people don't know what it is. They think it's just a matter of bringing social media into your business, or maybe getting a retail store online, things like that. But really, if you look at what's happening, like say you take Amazon, for example, everything is computerized in Amazon, and warehouses are computerized today. Even the equipment that's used in warehouses, the um, all of the trucks and things, and the robotics that go into warehouses. Warehouse workers today have to be able to deal with technology. I train them all the time on technology. And you're going to have vehicles that are going to be able to drive themselves. I'm sure it's going to be a lot like airplanes. My ex-husband is an airplane pilot, and that airplane flies itself from 10,000 feet on. The only thing the pilot does is make sure it takes off and lands correctly, and that the computer is programmed correctly for where it's going. And so you're going to see that in a lot of things today. So I think that people need to start looking at technology as where their business is and what they have to do to become a technology company. And when they hire me, that's what we do. What do you have to do to become a technology company?
That's amazing. Totally out of my wheelhouse at all. So, so where do you see the biggest mistakes that companies make are in what you call the digital economy? I mean, what people may not even know what they don't know, and
Correct.
that's a big factor. So, uh, you know, where are the mistakes?
Well, first of all, one of their biggest mistakes is thinking that it won't happen to them. And in the book I'm writing, I make an analogy of the digital revolution to the industrial revolution. And one simple example of an industry that didn't do well in the Industrial Revolution was the railroad industry, right? Railroad was king before the Industrial Revolution. And once you had the internal combustion engine, which gave you airplanes and cars and trucks and everything, the train became less important. And the railroad industry did not see themselves in the transportation business. They saw themselves in the railroad business. So today, the railroad industry is, just a small part of what it used to be or what it could be. And so companies that today act like the railroad industry did back at the turn of the 20th century are going to be in trouble in the 21st century. So that's the biggest mistake, is believing it won't happen to them. The second biggest mistake is seeing digital transformation, just what we talked about before, as just picking and choosing a few technologies that they're going to use and having what I call an incoherent digital strategy. And I belong to the National Association of Corporate Directors, and they've been really focusing on digital transformation over the last couple of years at the director level, at the board level in companies. And they recently had an article on on the demise of Sears. And they blame a big portion of the demise of Sears on their incoherent digital strategy. They never got it together on how they were going to roll out to the whole world what Sears was going to be as a digital company. And so I see those as the two biggest mistakes.
Yeah, it's really people who are entrenched in the old way of doing things and not open to what's in the future. And it really is scary in a part, because you don't know what the future holds, but it's going to definitely be different, and you've just got to be open to it and hopefully make the right choices. Now, you said you've got this in your book. You've got a new book. Tell us about the book and where people can get it and what's in it.
Well, it's not available yet. It should be available by early spring, but it's called Digital Transformation: How to Survive and Thrive in the New Digital Economy, and it is all about, for executives. I gear it primarily to mid-market executives, or executives of mid-market companies, I should say. And I talk about kind of the history and where technology is going. And then I give a short, brief summary of the different technologies and what they should look for. And then the biggest part is to go through a whole process of how they are going to need to look at their company. And that the first thing is they have to look at what their revised or new business model is going to be, considering the technologies that are available today. And an example I use, I'm very fortunate to have a friend, Paul Johnson, who was the strategist that transformed Kelley Blue Book, or what we know today as KBB. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but KBB is a company that offers knowledge and information about the pricing and value of used vehicles. And so years ago in the paper economy, right, it was just a book that was sold to dealers and manufacturers. And then in the late 90s, they decided that they wanted to go out to the consumer marketplace. And they hired my friend Paul. He wasn't my friend then, but he is now. But they hired Paul Johnson to be their strategist. And in the late 90s, you just had Amazon had just come out. Google was just coming out. You didn't have what you have today, but they decided that to go to the consumer marketplace, they couldn't sell it as a subscription like they did to the manufacturers. They had to sell it as or actually they decided to give it away free to the consumer on the internet. And then what they would do is, the way they would make money from it is they would sell the leads for people that were looking for cars to the manufacturers and the dealers. And that's how they made money. And they completely transformed themselves into nothing but a pure internet company.
It's interesting because you still see on Judge Judy, she always goes to the Blue Book and
Right.
has her person who's her deputy there look up what the value is, because everybody's coming in with all kinds of car issues. So that's funny. But yeah, I mean, I know the last time I went to look for it, everything was online, and I just thought that was very interesting.
Right. So they had to go through a lot of changes. They went through cultural changes. They had to invent a lot of technology. They had to change the way they design things and the way they thought about their company. And so that's the last part of the book that I go through for executives.
Wow. Well, but you've made some transitions in your life. You went from originally you were in St. Louis, and then you went to Southern California. No, you went to Northern California, then you went to Southern California, and now you've just moved back to the Midwest. So, what is that all about?
Well, life changes us a little bit. And when I was young, quite truthfully, when I went out to California, I didn't even think about it. I had I had seen an ad in the St. Louis paper for Levi Strauss looking for developers, and I told my sister at the time, I said, "Help me put together a resume. I'm gonna send this to Levi Strauss, and maybe I'll get a free trip to California." And I did get my interview in California, and I remember it was kind of like an out-of-body experience where I shook my head yes to a job offer and got on the airplane going home, going, "Oh my God, I got to tell my parents I'm moving to California." But California gave me a career I could have never had anyplace else, I don't think, during that time. And now at this time in my life, I'm a baby boomer. I'm a SOB just like you. And and so my parents had both passed away, and and my beloved cousin had a cancer scare, and so I just decided it was time to get closer to my family.
Well, I understand that. My son wants me to move to California, and I'm going to be there full time come the fall. And so this is going to be a big change for me as well because I've lived in Florida for 60 years, and now I'm going to be going out to California full time. But he said the same thing. He said, "Mom, it's time you're near me." And that's it. So I said, "Well, once I get out there, I hope you're not moving," because he does move a lot. So I know that you just said before that there was a shortage of talent in the technology field. So what would you say to a young person today who is deciding on career options and education? I mean, do they need to go to a 4-year degree college? Do they go to a technical school? What do they do to get them ready for something in a technology field?
Well, you would be amazed at the number of curriculums today at almost all colleges that are technology based. I mean, you can go to school just to become a technology executive. You can go to just networking school to learn about networking, which there are so many specialties just in the networking and the infrastructure field. It's unbelievable. You can go for the different types of development. I mean, today when you look at one of the fancy retail websites, for example, right, there are at least 4 or 5 different technology specialists that are needed to put together one of those websites. So I would look at the technology curriculums at any of the colleges and enroll in one of them.
Wow. Well, our time is rolling down and we have just a
Yes.
few minutes left. How can people reach you, Lynda? Where should they go? And do you have something you can offer to them, or what would you like to let our audience know?
Yes. Well, I'm in the process of having my website redone. I'm a little bit like the cobbler in his children's shoes. So my website has to get redone. But the best way to reach me is either through my email, Lynda, Lynda, at ljrcs.com, or my cell phone, which is 818-216-7264.
Well, that's interesting to really know where to find you and what to do. And so, Lynda, remember it's Lynda with an L-Y, not an L-I. It's Lynda at ljrcs.com. So if you want to reach Lynda, that's the place to find her. And also, I just was a little chuckling when you were talking about the different areas in technology because technology and networking don't seem to merge in my in my head, but I guess it does. So if you're a woman is looking to make a change, you're looking for a field that there is a tremendous amount of opportunity in, this is it. I mean, you just can't get something that has more of a demand than this. So if you're thinking about going back to school or taking extra courses, do so in this particular field because I think it will make a big, big difference for you. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave our listeners with, Lynda?
No, other than, especially for women, don't be afraid. You don't have to be a math whiz to be in technology today. So
Well, that's
Just,
helpful.
yes, no, you don't have to be a math whiz.
That's wonderful. Well, this program tries to bring different opportunities to you, and to me this is such a golden one right now. So if you're listening and you're one of those people that have been downsized or right sized, or even if you're just thinking about going into college, at different ends of the spectrum, whatever your situation is, this is an industry you should really look at, because it's wide open. And I think it's really open to women now too. So thank you so much for being with us. My guest has been Lynda Roth, a wonderful person who is a consultant in the information technology industry and the digital portion of it. So thanks so much for being with us, Lynda. Hopefully your website will be up soon. People can get you, but they can find you at your email or your cell phone.
And
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
they can also find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Lynda Roth.
Yay. Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gayle. It's a great time.
Thanks for listening to Women in Business. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And if you have any suggestions as to who you'd like me to have as a guest, just email me at gaylecarson13@gmail.com. Be sure to check out www.sob6tips.com. And in the meantime, go to www.spunkyoldbroad.com to see the resources I have for you.